New York Times critic Janet Maslin wrote that this movie is as handsome to watch as it is preposterous to listen to. In The New Yorker, Pauline Kael said, it's like visual rock, and it's bursting with energy. And Time Out London called it one of the best of 1979. On this episode of Ruined Childhoods, we decide the fate of the Warriors.
Sequel. Reboot. Which one will it be?
It's the Ruined Childhoods podcast.
Greetings, Starfighters, or perhaps I should say season's greetings, Starfighters.
Oh, boy.
Hey.
I knew it was going to be something, but I didn't know it was going to be that.
I had no idea it was going to be that until that happened. So, yeah, you know, I don't come up with this stuff in advance. Otherwise, it would probably get filtered out.
Fair enough. I want to apologize to our listeners who crave that Tuesday morning notification on their phone saying, yes, there is a new episode of Ruined Childhoods, but here's what happened. I completely lost my voice on Friday. Was it Friday? Yeah, Friday. And it was gone Saturday, and then Sunday it started to come back, and we just missed our opportunities to record. And it is now Tuesday.
John, you don't need to apologize. You didn't lose your voice. You weren't like, oh, man, I really don't want to record a podcast before Tuesday, so I'm just going to kind of lose my voice for a few days. You didn't choose this.
How convenient.
This happened to you.
Yeah.
You don't need to apologize. We appreciate, I'm sure I could speak for those listening, that we appreciate your explanation. But hey, you know what? We're not getting paid to drop these on Tuesday.
We certainly aren't. That's why you don't hear any ads.
We are getting paid, though, with, hopefully with some reviews, and we get paid with your emails. Send them to ruinedchildhoodspod@gmail.com, and your love.
Sure.
And to quote the Romantics, maybe, I don't want to lose your love tonight.
Yeah, right.
Or today, whenever you're listening to this. Anyway, it's Ruined Childhoods, the podcast where we talk about beloved properties, cinematic properties, franchises, classics, cult favorites, the type of things that in today's Hollywood often get bandied about in terms of a long-awaited sequel, a remake, or perhaps a reboot, if you will. And what John and I here discuss is whether or not we think, first of all, like, okay, should that even be done? Should that be touched? Are we talking about an untouchable property? And what ideas we might have and suggestions that we might have as fans or as people who empathize with fans of these properties. What would be the what we would think is the best route, best way to go?
Yeah,
path to choose.
And for anybody who listened to our last episode, we talked about The Graduate. There's a couple of things I wanted to follow up with on that and circle back around to. First of all, our mother did email us. I'm not going to read the email, but she did include the photograph that Dan referenced of our father in the, I guess, pose.
Yeah.
The Benjamin Braddock scuba pose. And that's posted on our Instagram feed at Ruined Childhoods Pod.
I'm not going to lie. He looks good. He looks
like he's having fun.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and I appreciate the speed at which our mother was able to find that photo to send to us.
Yes. I had a feeling, though, because I feel like the photo albums have been in somewhat recent history arranged, organized, perhaps.
Uh-huh.
And I had a sense of, because I do enjoy, when I'm at the house and I have the time, I enjoy looking through the old photos, seeing the old houses, the old hairstyles, styles in general. I felt like that picture was not far out of reach. I'm glad. I was more questioning whether I was inventing the existence of this picture. So I'm glad
It's there. It's a real thing.
It's real.
Yeah. Also, we mentioned something, and I said that we were going to come back around to it. We never did, but we never talked about how The Graduate was parodied in Wayne's World 2.
Yes.
Because you had mentioned it, and I was like, no, we'll come back around to that, but we didn't, and that's my fault. And the entire ending of The Graduate is meticulously parodied to the point that they shot it at, or at least the exterior of the same exact church.
Oh, yeah.
It was so absolutely incredible. Such a huge part of my childhood to see, I don't know, Wayne's World 2 do that. What's up?
Just like the blend. Well, first of all, and kudos to Mike Myers, Dana Carvey, the writers on Wayne's World 2, for somehow mixing into this extended Graduate allusion a Terminator 2 reference with Robert Patrick pulling Wayne over. Ask, have you seen this boy?
Well, yeah, and there's one thing that I really want to highlight, and the Wayne's World 2 parody of The Graduate has since changed the way that I see The Graduate. And I'm pretty sure that I saw the Wayne's World 2 parody before I actually saw the actual Graduate, or at least for me, it definitely stuck into my brain and psyche way before The Graduate did.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
The scene where, and I'll just say the Wayne's World 2 version, the scene where Wayne goes to the garage to speak to the gas station attendant, where he's basically saying like, sorry, can we get a better actor here?
And they bring in,
then they replace him.
Heston.
Yeah.
Charlton Heston.
Yeah, Charlton Heston comes in to replace him, and he gives this like moving performance. And then you watch The Graduate, and you watch the scene that's parodying, and you watch the gas station attendant, and you're just like, holy cow, that guy is terrible.
I had the same reaction.
The fact that they made a point to highlight that person's horrible acting is genius.
It's genius, and it's the only time, because I feel like Charlton Heston, the person, has gotten in the way of Charlton Heston, the actor, for me, in many respects. But I feel like the Wayne's World 2 cameo is one of those things where I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna enjoy this little Charlton Heston cameo. Right. And then I found myself missing him in The Graduate, which he's not in. And I did want to point out another cultural, because you've got, and interestingly enough, you've got Wayne's World 2 in 1993. 10 years later, in 2003, another very popular comedy that actually became more popular, I think, over time, Old School, makes a very direct reference to The Graduate when Will Ferrell, Frank the Tank, shoots himself with the horse tranquilizer and just trips out and then just falls into the pool, and they play the sounds of silence as he drifts to the bottom of the pool like Benjamin in The Graduate. And it's one of those, it's kind of like this great highbrow reference that also it's this great tribute. And I love that, Todd Phillips is a filmmaker that people definitely have mixed feelings on.
Right.
But I do respect and enjoy that tribute to The Graduate and taking that opportunity to pay tribute, or building the entire scene around it.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Well, we're not here to talk about The Graduate again. We're here to talk about The Warriors.
That we are. But first, John, just in some recent sequel, prequel, reboot, what have you news, have you seen the trailer for Ghostbusters Afterlife?
Oh, yeah. We've got a few trailers to talk about. Yes. I'm looking forward to it. I think it looks cool. It's kind of like how could you do a sequel now? Would it be another New York City frenzy?
Or would
And I
it
think
just
that
be the same thing in another city?
Right. And I think that doing it out in the middle of nowhere, I don't know if it will connect to any other locations, but pretty cool.
Well, I like that there's the connection to the original characters, with this being, I guess, the daughter and grandson of Egon, or daughter-in-law and grandson of Egon. And they moved to the farm, which when I originally saw that it was set like around a farm, I naturally thought of the Ray Stance's family farm.
Right. Yeah.
So, but I guess why wouldn't Egon also have a family farm? Maybe they explain that. But I'm interested to see how it compares in terms of tone. Like, is this a sequel or is this a reboot? And it made me think, the trailer made me think about tone and how much tone determines, because I felt like Ghostbusters 2 very much carried over the same tone from Ghostbusters 1. It kind of sillied it up a little bit.
Well, Ghostbusters 2 was actually picking up on the popularity of the real Ghostbusters, the animated television series.
Right.
And what they did is they made, I don't know, Slimer a more comical. I mean, he was pretty comical in the first one, but like he's a bus driver essentially.
I mean, he doesn't do much in the second one. Like he pops up with Rick Moranis. Yeah.
But also Janine's role and her look is heavily influenced by the animated series.
True.
So, yeah, short of making Egon blonde, that's basically what they were doing, is they were going off of the real Ghostbusters animated TV series.
Not to be confused with Filmation's Ghostbusters, which is not the real Ghostbusters.
It's the fake Ghostbusters.
I mean, it wasn't nearly as good as the real Ghostbusters, because it wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, something, and I guess we'll see when Ghostbusters Afterlife comes out, it seems like it has its own origin. It's like its own origin story and a new generation of ghost busting. So we'll have to see what characters come back and in what capacity. And honestly, who cares? what it technically is.
Who cares? No, I guess, and my final thought on it is this, and a concern that I have just from the trailer is this going to be like Stranger Things Ghostbusters edition, or Ghostbusters
I think that anybody,
Stranger Things edition?
Because of Finn Wolfhard, everybody's going to be making that comparison.
Yes,
and
but
honestly,
also,
well, what I'm thinking is like, he's a talented actor, and when it comes to looking like he could be the grandson of Egon, pretty much spot on.
Yes, but I'm not basing that solely on Finn Wolfhard. I mean, you'd be more qualified to say the same thing about it, except that it is tonally much darker than Stranger Things, whereas Ghostbusters Afterlife comes across as that, like, whatever, TV 14, TV PG, whatever.
Yeah.
PG 13 type, like sci-fi, like the kids who nobody else listens to except for the science teacher who's sympathetic because he's Paul Rudd.
Yeah.
And, the worried single mother, except it's not Winona Ryder. Is it Judy Greer?
Carrie Coon?
I
believe so.
Yeah.
It's not Judy Greer.
Oh, it's not Judy Greer? All right.
No.
I don't know why I thought it might be. She'd be great. Carrie Coon.
Yeah, but that's not who they cast.
So yeah, we'll see what happens. Who pops up in cameos? Who else is in the cast? What connections do we have? Will Ray Parker Jr.'s theme song be brought back? Or
Ray Parker III has recorded a new one.
Lord Raymond Parker III. Now,
much like my father, Bustin' makes me feel good.
Yeah, now Huey Lewis Jr. is Dewey Lewis, I guess, is suing him.
Oh, I can't believe I laughed at that.
Man, you
another
must be
trailer.
Sick. All right, yeah.
Another trailer that just dropped is the Top Gun Maverick.
Have not watched it
I don't know if you had a
yet.
chance to check it out. It came out the day that we're recording, so
Yes.
I mean, looks very cool. I wasn't sure about the teaser that came out about a month or two ago, but this one, it's kind of like, okay, I think I can get behind it. It's feels like Top Gun, and they make it pretty clear when they show that there's some sort of shirtless sporting scene on maybe a beach.
They have to switch it up a little bit, so
Yeah, I don't know.
yeah, I don't know. On the wings of a plane.
Yeah, they're sexy badminton.
They're playing rooftop hockey. I just know, like, I'm a fan of what Joseph Kosinski did with Tron Legacy.
Okay.
And I guess for me, it's the thing that I have to get past is I'm not a big fan of Top Gun.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm enough of a fan of Top Gun to want to see the new Top Gun movie. I think it'll be a fun experience. Is it going to be a great movie? Probably not, but I'm sure it'll be fun.
Controversial opinion, I'm a Days of Thunder guy.
Yeah.
I mean, in your tone,
you don't have to be one or the other.
yeah, no, you do. It's like Beatles, Rolling
okay.
Stones. You can like them both, but you don't like them both the same. Got to pick one or the other.
Fair enough.
All right. Hey, you know what? I'm going to go for it. I'm a Stones guy.
Okay. All right.
Hey, all due respect to the Fab Four.
Well, along the lines of fights that people can pick, we're going to switch gears and talk about the Warriors. Was
All
that an
right.
okay segue? I feel like some of them are easier than others, and that one was a bit of a stretch.
No, not really. You made it. You did it.
The Warriors is a 1979 film directed by Walter Hill, who you may know from Aliens or 48 Hours, starring Nick Nolte.
Oh,
And
you know who else is in that? James Remar. And
Yeah.
David Patrick Kelly.
is David Patrick Kelly in it too?
David Patrick Kelly, he's in every action movie in the 1980s, but yes.
Yeah.
David Patrick
So
Kelly
The
also
Warriors is adapted from a book, and it is about... What's up?
Sorry, we should probably explain just in case anyone is listening to this for the first time. John and I do this little game where we try to connect cast members of the movie we're talking about to cast members of the movie Lorenzo's Oil from 1992, which starred Susan Sarandon, Nick Nolte, Peter Ustinov, and Margot Martindale in supporting roles, and then really no one else. No offense to anybody else who was in Lorenzo's Oil, including Lorenzo.
Correct.
It's really hard to connect anyone else to that. And why do we do that? I don't know, but we do that. So if you hear us like randomly pointing out that someone was in something with Nick Nolte, Susan Sarandon, Margot Martindale, or Peter Ustinov, that's it. We've Lorenzo'd the show.
So the other night, my kid was putting ornaments on a Christmas tree, and every time I know, and I think about Lorenzo's Oil. And if you've seen Lorenzo's Oil, you know what I'm talking about too. So I just kind of sat there like ready to pounce in case anything went wrong.
Oh, geez. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't make it past
That
the
scene
first 5
messed
minutes.
me up.
I did not make it past it has been since like 1993 since I've seen the first 5 minutes of that movie and not a moment more.
Yeah, right.
I cannot. Yeah.
So The Warriors is
Yes.
about, well, okay, first of all, I watched the director's cut on purpose. I knowingly watched the director's cut.
Oh, okay, cool. I did not watch the director's cut.
Okay. So in the director's cut, it says at the beginning, sometime in the future, which I don't believe is part of the theatrical release.
Right.
But
yes.
It is 1970s New York City, ultra gritty New York. What's up?
That was actually a question I had for you because I feel like I've always known that The Warriors was set in some type of future from 1979, certainly not from now. And I think the music lends itself to that, the nature of these gangs. It reminded me very much of A Clockwork Orange, which is also one of
Right.
those set in, like I think A Clockwork Orange was supposed to be set in 1990, which interestingly is kind of where I was thinking about New York in 1979, and I did some research looking at just what was going on in the late 70s, and I was born in 1977, so I have no recollection, but I remember, even in the early 80s, that feeling, that sense that New York City, especially New York at night, was this really kind of like gritty, dangerous place.
Right.
And then you think about that in the 1970s when it really was. I think a movie that actually captures it probably pretty well is Summer of Sam, Spike Lee's movie.
Oh, yeah.
I felt like, because that takes place in the summer of 77, and I feel like it really captures that, like, there's just that kind of like tension where it's like you don't know what's going to happen. And like, I'm sure New York wasn't entirely like that in the 70s. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but that's the image. And when you look at, old pictures and articles about what was going on in that time, there really was a lot of crime in New York. There was a lot of kind of gang activity and areas that were definitely kind of controlled by gangs, not gangs in face paint and baseball uniforms.
Right. Well, I'm going to come back around to that in a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm just going to breeze through synopsis. This will be really, really quick.
Oh, but I wanted to ask you before you went on, when do you think it's set?
I mean, to me, it feels like it's just set in late 70s, early 80s New York, but like a side of it that we don't know about, that people don't typically get keyed into. I mean, the only other people that you see in this movie, I want to do a synopsis first, and then we'll go into
do the synopsis, and then we'll come back to it, yeah.
So there are a ton of different gangs all around New York, and each of them have their own turfs, and they kind of just stay in their own turfs. And there is a ceasefire. There is a bit of a truce at the moment because each of the main gangs, there's like gangs that are not quite registered or official, or they're maybe under the radar, but the main gangs all send a group of people to this park in the Bronx to meet up with this guy Cyrus, who runs the biggest gang in New York called the Gramercy Riffs. And Cyrus everyone's saying it's like, he's the one, he's the guy, he's got these great ideas, and we're all just going to go hear him out. And basically what Cyrus says, after saying, "Can you dig it?" a bunch of times, which is amazing, is that these gangs outnumber the cops like 4-1. And if they all work together, borough by borough, they can take over the whole city. Then what happens is Luther, who is the leader, I guess you can say, of the rogues, shoots Cyrus and claims that it's somebody from the gang, the Warriors, who are from Coney Island. And unbeknownst to the Warriors, all of the other gangs are sent out to find them and bring them back to the Riffs, dead or alive. And the Warriors are just trying to get back to Coney Island where it's safe. They find out towards the end about what happened with Luther, and it ultimately ends up in a standoff at Coney Island. But fortunately, the Riffs found out what really happened and take care of Luther the old-fashioned way and give the Warriors a nice pat on the back for kicking ass, being a great gang. That's all. And Luther is played by David Patrick Kelly, who has the chilling line Warriors come out to play, where he is clinking the beer bottles on his fingers, and it's just like the sound of it is so menacing, and he has just this look, and it's just like, man, this guy's crazy, and it's awesome. And when asked why he shot Luther, he's just like, I just like to do stuff like that sometimes.
Why he shot Cyrus.
Why Luther shot Cyrus. And yeah, it's so great. And David Patrick Kelly, I mean, for me, he's been in everything, but I recognize him most from Twin Peaks.
Yeah. Jerry Horn.
Yeah. Jerry Horn. He's just so good.
He's
so
great.
good.
Action movie fans would remember him as Sully in Commando.
Right.
You're a really funny guy. I do much better Arnold Schwarzenegger impressions when we're not recording.
Sure you do. I do. So the Warriors, the Warlord, I think is what they call the main person who's in charge of the gang at the moment. The one who's in charge at the beginning gets carried away by some of the riffs and beaten up. We assume that they probably killed him because he's the one that that Luther said shot Cyrus. And that means that the next person in charge is Swan, who's played by Michael Beck of Xanadu fame and like a ton of other things. And he's kind of just like this quiet and collected, I don't know, ultra hunk. Very attractive people in this movie. And what's interesting about Swan and the rest of the Warriors is like, although they are the good guys, they're not great people.
No,
they're very problematic. And the most problematic of the group of the Warriors is Ajax, who's played by James Remar, who's been in everything, including 48 Hours.
Dexter's father.
Dexter's father. And it's so awesome seeing him in such an early role.
Yeah.
And it's just like, he's so good at this. And then like, you know where his life and career goes, and you're just like, I can see how that happened. He's just so good.
Yeah, he is.
We have a radio DJ who's the one that kind of signals out to all the gangs about the things that are going on and gives them a bit like a soundtrack for the night. That's played by Lynn Thigpen, who's the chief from Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego.
Yes. Although she's
been in a ton of other things.
But to me, I feel like I have a negative inclination towards her for no other reason than I think the first thing I saw her in, or at least like really remember her from, was Lean on Me. And she was like the parent who was so against Joe Clark, Morgan Freeman, and gave him such a hard time. And I always felt like, I was like, lady, why are you getting in the way? This man wants to make progress.
Oh,
I mean, arguably, like it's interesting watching that movie once you've worked in the school system, especially in the inner city.
Right.
And seeing, and like, you know, he chains the doors shut in that movie and you're just like, oh, bad, really, really bad. Lots of kids, fire hazard. Union is not going to protect you. Anyway.
Yeah.
Back to the Warriors.
Also, they are joined by Mercy, who's played by Deborah Van Vacklenberg, who is loosely associated with the Orphans, one of the first gangs that the Warriors encounter, who are like a bunch of dummies who aren't like, they weren't invited to the meetup in the Bronx, and they're just affiliated. Like dirty. Yeah, they're just like dirty and weird. They're not in the union. So they're just like these weirdos who are this like wannabe gang essentially. And Mercy essentially calls them chickens for letting the Warriors go. And when the Warriors like come back at them with a Molotov cocktail to a car, she's like, I think I'm going to hang out with these guys from now on. And it basically follows them down to Coney Island. And really interesting character.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's kind of a shame that Deborah Van Vacklenberg has popped up in a bunch of things, but has never really done anything that was as big.
Yeah. You know, John, there's this one scene that this movie, I think when most people think of the Warriors, they think of the fights. I mean, the action scenes are incredible. They think of David Patrick Kelly with the bottles going, Warriors, come out and play. One of the scenes that actually adds so much meaning to this movie is they're on the subway. I think it's probably when they get on at Union Square. The
prom kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've just escaped from gang after gang after gang. Yeah. They've already fought pretty much all of them at this point. Except
that would have been right after they fought with the the roller skating in the
baseball
bathroom.
Oh, that guy! You know who that guy reminded me of? From Dazed and Confused, the character from Dazed and Confused.
I know who you mean.
Yeah, except Dazed and Confused takes place in 1976, so it's kind of like, well, he wasn't aping that style, but interesting. Anyway, the scene where they're on the train and it's Mercy is sitting with Swan, thank you, and they're bruised, they're cut up, But the thing is, it doesn't faze them. They're kind of bruised and cut up the whole movie, and it doesn't faze them. You don't notice it, and this is such a fascinating part of the movie. And it really, I think, watching it this time and looking at it through a more critical lens really makes me appreciate the direction of it. Because first you have this scene where these four kids who are clearly, it's the first time you really see people that are not part of this gang community.
Well, that's one of the things I wanted to talk about is like the only people that you see that aren't in gangs are firefighters, cops, these four kids. You see a few people like in the streets at one point, but aside from that, there's nobody else.
And I would argue that even the cops are treated as a gang.
Right. Mm-hmm.
They're a gang. They're another gang. That's who the Warriors think they're on the run from. Yeah. Really is the cops. Like you said, they don't realize that they've been framed for Cyrus's murder until almost the end. Yeah. So, but I love this scene, and it just to describe it, they're sitting there and these four kids who are just from a different world. Maybe they live in the city. Maybe they came in from Long Island or Jersey, but they're not from the neighborhoods that these people are from, that Mercy or the Warriors are from. And they're this reminder that there's this other world. And it's a reminder to us at the viewer, because at this point we're so into this gangland nightscape of the Warriors that we're not shown this other side of New York. It was very polarized, I feel. And what he captured was, it's a reality check for these people. And they sit down and they look at Mercy, and you see the camera shows like her feet are dirty and scraped, and all of a sudden it's like she doesn't feel pretty anymore. And it's such a touching moment when Swan gives her the flowers when they get off the train. But then they get off the train, and it's also the first time we see daylight. Yeah. All of a sudden, these light things, the prom kids getting on the train in these really light colors, and then daylight. It's so startling to us because we're so into that world. But that's, to me, it's where the heart of this movie is, and it lends itself to the message that would have been perfectly applicable to 1979 New York City and the life that people lived, not because they necessarily chose it, but because they had to. Yeah, and Mercy definitely talks quite a bit about how she likes her life. She knows that it's not glamorous or perfect in any way, but like she's happy with where she is, and she knows that she has to be happy with where she is in life because she's not being handed anything. No. Yeah. So basically it's like, look, I'm just going to hang out with the gang that works out best for me because that's what I've got. And she chose wisely because those doofuses and the orphans were no good. Oh, man. Oh, that guy, the leader of the orphans, that guy's fantastic. Yeah, I think his name was like Sully or something like that. Yeah. So another thing that happens is some of the warriors get kind of picked off along the way. One of whom gets kind of tossed in front of a subway train. Oh yeah, by a cop. By a cop, right? Because they're in this big, fight with these cops in the subway, and he just gets kind of tossed into it. And it's just like he's never mentioned again. Like, doesn't even get
acknowledge that happened. Another one is Ajax gets busted by an undercover cop played by Mercedes Ruehl.
Academy Award winner Mercedes Ruehl of The Fisher King.
One of my favorite movies. And
as well.
Also, she was recently in Hustlers.
Was she? That's great.
Yeah, she plays kind of like the mother role to all of these strippers. And
Yeah, that makes sense.
And when I saw her, I was just like, hey, it's Mercedes Ruehl. Great.
That rules.
That rule.
That doesn't just rule. That
holes.
Mercedes rules.
Yeah.
It rules.
And so what happens is they're walking through the park, and Ajax sees her, and he's like, I'm going to go over there, and says some skeezy things. Yeah, well, that's kind of the plan, but when he sits down, she is totally coming on to him.
Yeah.
And it's not until they actually initiate contact that he gets really rough, and then she cuffs him to the bench, and then a bunch of cops come. I mean, it's kind of great.
Yeah.
What's also interesting is there are a lot of moments in the movie where you think that the Warriors are going to do something really bad. It ends up not being as bad as you think it's going to be. That's one of them, where it's like you think he's going to go there and just rape her.
Yeah.
Instead, it turns into this other thing where he does get aggressive, but he gets his comeuppance. Another thing is when the Warriors are with the orphans and Swan goes down to Mercy's dress, and you think that he's going to like rape her.
Yeah.
And he just tears off a bit of her dress to make the Molotov cocktail. And it's just from the bottom. It's not like in a bad spot or anything. And then another time is when there's a group of the Warriors who get off one of the subway cars and see this group of girls, and you think like, uh-oh, what are they going to do to these girls? But the girls are totally just like, yes, let's hang out. And as we find out, they are members of the gang, the Lizzies.
The Lizzies.
Who bring them into their den and are essentially just like, all right, take your pick, whichever one of us you want. And they're all just like dancing and just like having a great time. And then it turns out that they lock the door and try to kill them because they are under orders, and they use their sexuality to bring the Warriors in. They're awesome.
Yeah.
I love the Lizzies. They're great.
I mean, fantastic scene. What I love about that scene is the way that the tension builds. I love that you have one character. You have Rembrandt, who
right.
I love the character of Rembrandt.
Yeah, he's the one who's more cautious. He seems
cautious.
Younger. He seems like not so sure about everything that they're doing.
Yeah,
and rightfully so.
I love the way that the tension builds in that scene, like with the jukebox. You've got the girls they're passing around a joint, so there's that element of drugs and like there's danger, and it's actually pretty risque, especially for 1979. The two girls who are dancing, and I think they start doing more than dancing. I thought the tension built over that scene. You knew from the time. I feel like you kind of saw it coming. Like you knew it. You knew something was going to go wrong. And then there's that moment when the door locks and you see the gun pulled. And that's the moment when they find out, because Rembrandt's the one who hears them say, you're the ones who iced Cyrus.
Right. Yeah. But that's only 3 of the Warriors. So there's still the rest of them who don't know.
It's what's his face, like Rat, or who's the other one? Vermin.
I don't remember their name. Vermin. Yeah.
Vermin.
Yeah. It's a really cool scene. That's maybe my favorite scene. It's so powerful to me and just so badass, because you're not rooting against the Lizzies except for the fact that you have to, because the movie's called The Warriors.
Right. Although, man, the Lizzies cannot shoot.
Yeah.
Because they had guns ablazing everywhere. They could not. Rembrandt got cut.
Right.
But I was like, how are they not hitting these guys? How are they're shooting at pretty close range? Like they're in an apartment. How are they not hitting these guys?
Yeah.
But anyway,
So-
I love the scene too. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a really fun movie. I will say the difference between the theatrical release and the director's cut, from my memory of the theatrical release, the director's cut is essentially the same, except at the beginning it has like scrolls essentially telling like a story from like medieval times or something like that.
Is it the Greek myth that this is based on?
Oh, it might be actually.
Based
then
on,
the other
Anabasis.
Anabasis, that's it. And then there are certain times when it goes from like different location to different location where it'll freeze frame and turn into like a comic panel, and then like the frame will turn into like a drawing of itself, and then it'll kind of move the page.
Well, that reflects that it's based on a graphic novel.
Right, but what didn't work for me about it is that I don't know when the director's cut was made, but it seemed way more recent than it should have been. Like the font was like Comic Sans, and it takes you out of it.
You know what? I think I've seen the director's cut, and it's the backstory of how I came to own the copy of the theatrical cut, because the copy that I own is just whatever the original Paramount Pictures issued DVD release was, nothing special on it. And I remember it was when I was living with Big Kev. I was rooming
the aforementioned on previous episodes, Big Kev.
I was rooming with Big Kev of Big Kev's Geek Stuff. And Big Kev, this was a favorite movie of his, if I remember correctly. And I lived there 2004 to 2007. So it was somewhere in that range. So Comic Sans would be appropriate fontage. And I remember Big Kev bought the special edition director's cut when it came out on DVD. This is pre Blu-ray we're talking. And so he just gave me his copy of the other one.
Gotcha.
So
that's cool.
Kev, if you're listening, thank you. I have watched that DVD on several occasions. So,
yeah.
And I don't remember the first time I saw it. I couldn't tell you when.
Right. I was probably in college. That's when you see the Warriors.
I guess, yeah, like high school, college.
Now I want to jump to Life Beyond the original release of the Warriors. There have been a few things to mention before we get into where our minds have gone. In 2015, there was a short documentary. I think it was done by like Rolling Stone. Hey, speaking of the Rolling Stones, Rolling Stone magazine did something called The Warriors, The Last Subway Ride Home, which had a lot of the original cast members going back to Coney Island and revisiting the Warriors and seeing how Coney Island people view the Warriors, essentially. I haven't seen it, so I can't say for sure how it all plays out, but that's something. There was a video game for PlayStation in 2005. More notably, going back to, you were talking about Tony Scott before. Tony Scott had planned a remake of the film.
Yeah.
This is from Wikipedia. It says, in an interview in 2005, Tony Scott said that the remake would be set in modern-day New York City. Gangs such as the Baseball Furies. We didn't talk about the Baseball Furies.
Barely. We alluded to them.
The Baseball Furies are a gang that they fight in Riverside Park, I want to say. I know it's somewhat near 96th Street, because that's the station that they go to. Yeah,
I want to say that where they're fighting might be Morningside Park. Just because there's that huge slope. Actually, so just to jump, you mentioned Riverside Park. That is where they actually filmed the big scene with all the gangs. That was It was meant, so it's supposed to be Van Cortlandt Park, but I don't remember why they couldn't film in Van Cortlandt Park, which is at the north end of the Bronx. For those of anyone unfamiliar with Manhattan or New York City geography, the Warriors are traveling from the very top of the island, the North Bronx, all the way to the very south of Brooklyn. So
Brooklyn.
the northernmost end of New York City, the 5 boroughs,
It's
to
far.
the southernmost end. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Even, I mean, a hellish journey at any time of day.
Briefly, while we're talking about the production, you had mentioned actual gangs in New York. The production crew or the production trucks were actually guarded by actual New York gangs, and they were paid, I think, like $500 a day or something.
Well, they
to do
used
that.
gang members in that scene, in the big scene with Cyrus.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, like actual New York gangs were very active in the production of this movie, which is so cool.
I love that.
Yeah. So gangs such as the Baseball Furies and the Hi-Hats would not be included in the remake, it says. And then after Tony Scott died, Mark Neveldine? I don't know. Showed
You
interest
say
in
Neville
directing.
Dean, I say Neville Dean.
Well, we're not going to call the whole thing off. He directed Ghost Rider, Spirit of Vengeance, and I think that's pretty much it. Married to Alison Lohman.
Oh, okay.
She's delightful. You haven't
Of
seen her in a
Matchstick
long
Men?
time. Of Matchstick Men, of Big Fish.
It's the first thing that pops into my mind. I think like White Oleander.
She's great in
wasn't she
Matchstick Men.
Yeah,
Right,
Matchstick
yeah.
Men.
And then in
Ridley Scott.
in July of 2016, this is also according to Wikipedia, Joe and Anthony Russo announced that they were working with Paramount and Hulu for a reimagined Warriors TV series. Frank Baldwin was signed on to write the series. So those are all the things that have happened or may happen or have been talked about happening with the Warriors since then. The PlayStation video game is essentially the plot of the movie. There's
Right.
nothing more to it as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
So Dan, what would you do with the Warriors now?
Well,
And if you say what I'm going to say, I would not be surprised.
well, okay. So a couple of just thoughts and connections. So we know the Warriors takes place in the near future. Let's say it takes place in the 1980s, because honestly, it's not a far cry from 1979 New York City.
Sure.
Another movie that takes place not too long after that could be set up by the events of the Warriors. Now, let's say at the end of this, the Riffs at the top end of New York and the Warriors at the bottom end of New York, who kind of have a partnership now, kind of make Cyrus's plan happen, or they try to make it happen, but it results in New York eventually becoming a police, like New York City becoming taken over martial law, the military, and eventually becoming a prison island where the President of the United States crashes and Snake Plissken is sent out to retrieve him in Escape from New York.
You know what? I could see it. I could see it happening.
Now, I want to make another connection because, of course, as I'm thinking sequel, and I'm like, oh, but that would be interesting. But I'm like, oh yeah, Escape from New York. Like, what if Snake Plissken had encountered leftover members of these gangs? Amazing, right? So, but then you go backwards and it's like, okay, so how about a movie of the origin of all these gangs? Like, how did it start? Where did it start? What did it start with? And then I thought of Gangs of New York, which,
Okay.
if I were to watch it as a Warriors prequel, I think I would enjoy it much more than I enjoyed it the first time I saw it, which was not very much.
That's one that I haven't seen, and every time I think about watching it, I'm like,
Here's my take on Gangs of New York. I love the beginning, like the first 10, 15 minutes where it's like Liam Neeson and his crew up against Daniel Day-Lewis and his crew. But then Liam Neeson's character, who is like awesome, and you're all like, oh yeah, no, he's going to kick ass, is dead. And then you've got Leonardo DiCaprio, who, when he is in the right roles, I think is fantastic. But when he's miscast, he's really, it sticks out to me. Gangs of New York, I thought, had some pretty terrible miscasting of Leonardo DiCaprio and Cameron Diaz. And I felt like it really dragged. I was just like, when is this going to end? When are we going to get to whatever it is we're getting to? So that's my take of Gangs on New York. But I was imagining almost like a Warriors prequel set. I mean, what was that? Like turn of the 20th century?
Right.
Now that you say turn of the century, you have to be specific. So, John, back to the Warriors. I kind of like, so I like the Russo. So I think the idea of a prequel would be fun. I don't know that I would want a remake. I think I would need to go and actually read the source material, the novel, to see if it kind of calls for a readaptation or reimagining. But I do think an expanded series where maybe the series is following different gangs and it's set in this world and it's showing, maybe like almost a Sopranos, if you will, for the street gang crowd. So that's okay. That's where I'm landing on it. That's kind of where I'm landing. I would go prequel, origin story. Where does this? How did the gang structure begin? But not Gangs of New York. And right. I'd be interested to see this Joe and Anthony Russo Hulu series. It could they could be a good fit for the property.
As far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm slightly in line with you in one of the last things that you said, which is exploring the different gangs. But here's the thing. The riffs, I mean, they're kind of interesting. They do martial arts. That's kind of cool. They're seemingly an all-black gang, which I want to mention. Another thing that I really like about the Warriors is that there is a lot of diversity, and it's never made an issue of. And
if I can add in, I watched a brief behind-the-scenes documentary, and Walter Hill was talking about how he initially proposed that there should be no white characters in the gangs. Oh. He didn't want any white characters.
Well, I think that the way that it turned out was really strong because you have, a lot of different races in there, and it's never made an issue of at all.
Right. Which is, that actually really does add to the commentary. I really think this is like a higher quality film than it's often given credit for.
Absolutely. So anyway, the riffs, they're pretty interesting. We see the Turnbill ACs. They're a gang who's on this truck who is trying to run down the Warriors. I don't know. We don't really know anything about them. I want to say that some of them are, one of the guys calls one of them a skinhead. I don't know if they mean like skinhead, or just the fact that his head's shaved.
Well, the Turnbill ACs, could the A stand for Aryan and the C's stand for crew?
We don't know this.
I don't know.
We've got the Rogues who, with the exception of Luther, are pretty uninteresting people.
You know who they reminded me of? This is one of those really strong... I mean, it's almost impossible to not connect the Warriors to A Clockwork Orange, because A Clockwork Orange was very much about this quasi-futuristic gangland at night. I felt that the Rogues reminded me of Billy Boy's gang in Clockwork Orange. That's the gang that Alex and his droogs come across on their first night out, right. And they're in that derelict casino, he calls it, and they're, of course, raping a woman.
Right.
And Alex and his guys come in and kind of, they save her, but not for the purpose of saving her, but just because they want to fight these other guys. Mm-hmm. And they, like, I felt like was it Luther, one of his sidekicks, kind of had a similar, like, Nazi pin or badge on his hat.
Oh, I don't remember that, but I could see that being a thing. Oh, another civilian, another non-gang member is the girl who runs the little newsstand that the Rogues are, I don't know, stealing candy from? I don't know. Luther's on the payphone outside.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, so aside from Luther, the Rogues are pretty uninteresting. The Orphans are a bunch of dummies. Baseball Furies are essentially silent. They're like mimes.
They're
I don't know if
baseball mimes with colorful face paint.
Yeah, so we've seen all we need to see it from them as far as I'm concerned. I don't know if we got the name of the gang that they fought in the subway bathroom. Although, imagine how that must have smelled. Yikes.
Ooh.
Aside from the roller skating guy, they're all just a bunch of just, I
They
don't
wear
know.
overalls. Like, that's they're like my
That's
buddy.
their thing. But the Lizzies, that is a gang that is extremely interesting. And I want to see more of those Lizzies. Whether it's a series or just a movie, it could be a prequel, it could be a sequel, it could be its own standalone thing. Doesn't matter. The Lizzies are interesting, and I want more of them.
A spin-off prequel.
Yeah, just the Lizzies. Yeah. The other thought that I had was a prequel spin-off focused on Mercedes Rule's character.
Would it just be called Mercedes Rules?
Yeah, kind of. It's
like apostrophe as her rules, the rules that you have to follow.
It's a young female undercover cop in, let's just say, late 70s, early 80s in New York City. That's really interesting, and she handles herself extremely well and performs her job extremely well. Really interesting character.
Wasn't that show, Policewoman with Jessica Walter? Am I making this up?
Oh, I don't know.
But who would you cast as a young Mercedes Rule?
That's a good question.
Like a Selena Gomez?
Lizzie Kaplan?
Lizzie Kaplan. Oh, Lizzie Kaplan would be a good young Mercedes Rule.
Yeah, Selena Gomez. I
Selena
don't know
Gomez.
about that. Yeah, I don't know.
Why not?
Yeah, Lizzie Kaplan. Let's put Lizzie Kaplan in there.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily need to be prequel. It could just be its own standalone thing, movie or series. Mm-hmm. But that's what I would want to see.
All right.
Because this movie has fascinating and kick-ass female characters.
If I may.
You may.
I can dig it.
You can dig it.
To paraphrase / answer Cyrus's question.
Yeah.
Can you dig it? I love his voice.
Oh, he's amazing.
Can you dig it?
The actor who played Cyrus, whose name
Roger Hill.
Roger Hill. He had some legal beef with the PlayStation game that came out because they used his likeness without his permission. But I believe he has since passed, so we won't be getting any more Cyrus stuff. I mean, Cyrus is dead, but famously.
Roger Hill will not be coming back to the franchise.
No.
Or any franchise.
Yeah. Pour one
R.I.P.
out.
Pour one out for Roger Hill. We can dig it,
Dan,
Cyrus.
Any last thoughts for the Warriors?
Just to say, if you haven't seen The Warriors in a long time, check it out. I would say watch it in don't just break out the old VHS you have, because you probably don't have a VCR anyway. But if you're like me, you do. And watch, really check out this movie. Try to watch it when it's dark so that you can really experience the neon, the fluorescence, that light. Those lights really...
Yeah.
But it showed you this other side of the city. And I love the way that he uses the lights and the daylight it makes. It's the one time where a showdown that happens in the early morning after all this night, there's so much tension behind this showdown because it's been building up to it, but it's also it's dawn.
Yeah, which makes Luther even creepier.
Yes. So just to say that I've always really enjoyed The Warriors, but I've gained a greater appreciation for it after this most recent viewing. John?
I couldn't agree more. It's a fantastic movie. Gets better with every viewing for me. And when I was watching it, I said to Laura, my wife, before I put it on, would you like to watch it with me? Because it's something where she always references Luther's line at the end, but has never actually seen it. And I'm like, you can't say it if you haven't seen it.
I'm sure
So you
there's a
gotta
lot
see
of
it.
people who say it without seeing it.
Oh, I'm sure it's another one of those lines that's parodied or used all the time.
Yeah.
She was like, no, I, want to get to bed early. Maybe 15 minutes into it, she comes in, sits down and says, all right, I'm not going to get sucked in, and stayed not just until the very end, but I then rewound it and caught her up on the beginning.
Did you watch it on VHS? You rewound it?
Well, what else would you call it? I went back in time in the thing. I don't know.
I went back into an earlier track. I went back. Sorry, I'm just busting your chops.
We can still say rewind.
I'm just busting chops. I know. I say it. I don't know. I don't know if I say it, but it's fine.
It's okay.
We
can say these things.
You can say it. I say fast forward.
Yeah, it's the same.
But I
same
feel like
thing.
fast forward, though, I feel like rewind is specific to the action happening with the VHS tape, where it's fast forward is just like, I'm going to go forward, but faster than the rate I'm going now. Should be
And
faster
what would you like?
forward.
So then should it be fast reverse?
Reverse scan.
Okay, whatever. Let's talk about our next episode.
Oh, boy. Well, talking about a reverse scan, I don't know. That has no connection whatsoever. Yes.
You want to take that again with something that makes sense?
No, I don't have anything that makes sense. So no, for our next film, we are going to be tackling a classic from 1990, all about a New York gangster who ends up going into the witness protection program. That's right, folks. We're talking about My Blue Heaven.
Very excited, Dan.
Thought I was talking about Goodfellas, didn't you? Didn't you? Huh?
Well,
There's a connection.
We will talk about it on the next episode.
We will get to it. So My Blue Heaven, 1990, Steve Martin, Rick Moranis. Can't wait to talk about it, John.
Good journey, Dan.
Good journey.